It all started with a lie, one that ate away at my soul every single day. Josh didn't just see me as his wife, he saw me as his personal ATM, a walking source of cash to fund his extravagant lifestyle. But it wasn't just the way he used my money, it was how he made sure I knew exactly where I stood in his life, beneath him, beneath everyone, really. At company parties, while I tried my best to smile and blend into the background, Josh would seize any opportunity to humiliate me in front of his colleagues. He'd make snide remarks about how plain I looked, or joke about how I couldn't keep up with conversations because I lacked intellectual depth. Once, during a particularly excruciating evening, he leaned back in his chair, smirking as he told a group of coworkers, "Daisy's sweet, but let's be honest, she's no trophy wife." The laughter that followed felt like daggers piercing through me. That night, I cried myself to sleep, wondering why I stayed with someone who so clearly despised me. But the worst part? His cruelty didn't stop there. It seeped into every corner of our lives, poisoning everything it touched. One afternoon, I stumbled upon a series of text messages on his phone, messages between him and another woman. They were intimate, filled with promises of love and plans for secret rendezvous. My heart shattered, but I decided to confront him, hoping against hope that there might be some explanation, some sliver of truth that could salvage what little faith I had left in him. When I showed him the text, his reaction shocked me more than the betrayal itself. Instead of apologizing or even denying it, he turned the tables on me. "You're always snooping around," he snapped, his voice dripping with disdain. "Can't you trust anyone? Or are you just so insecure that you have to fabricate problems?" He went further, accusing me of being paranoid, of seeing ghosts where none existed. "You need help, Daisy," he said coldly, shaking his head as if disappointed in a child. "This constant negativity, it's exhausting." For days afterward, I questioned myself. Was I overreacting? Was I truly imagining things? But deep down, I knew better. Something dark lurked beneath the surface of our marriage, something far worse than I could have ever imagined. The morning after Josh's latest betrayal, I woke up to a scene that felt like something out of a nightmare. My apartment, the home we had built together, was unrecognizable. The couch was gone, the paintings stripped from the walls, and even small things like my favorite vase and photo frames seemed to have vanished into thin air. Panic gripped me as I stumbled through the empty spaces, trying to make sense of what had happened. How could someone take everything? Why would anyone do this? My hands trembled as I reached for my phone and dialed our neighbor's number. "Did you see anything unusual last night?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. But they all said the same thing. Nothing seemed out of place. No one suspicious had been lurking around. I couldn't believe it. Was I losing my mind? That thought terrified me more than anything else. Before I could process further, Josh appeared in the doorway with an unsettling calmness, sipping his coffee as if nothing was wrong. When I told him about calling the police, his demeanor shifted instantly. His lips curled into a smirk, and he leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "Daisy," he began, his tone dripping with condescension, "you really think there's been a robbery?" He shook his head slowly as though pitying a child who didn't understand reality. "You're confused again. This isn't the first time you've imagined things being stolen." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Confused, imagined. No, this wasn't some delusion, it was real. Yet when the officers arrived, Josh spun an elaborate tale about my supposed mental instability. "She has episodes where she moves things around and then forgets she did it," he explained matter-of-factly, handing over fake medical documents he'd forged months ago. To my horror, the officers exchanged knowing glances, and one of them gently suggested I might need professional help. "Perhaps a short stay at a facility would be beneficial," the officer offered, his voice laced with false sympathy. Betrayal burned in my chest, hotter and sharper than ever before. Josh wasn't just gaslighting me, he was systematically dismantling my credibility, stripping away my agency piece by piece. As they discussed next steps, I felt myself shrinking, my voice drowned out by their certainty. For the first time, I wondered if I truly was broken beyond repair. But deep inside, a spark of defiance flickered. If Josh thought he could silence me so easily, he was gravely mistaken. As the officers sifted through the so-called evidence Josh had prepared, I felt my world crumbling further. He didn't stop at claiming that I was delusional. He painted me as a woman teetering on the edge of insanity. Daisy once insisted she owned a luxury car. he told them with a theatrical sigh, shaking his head in mock concern. But there was no car, just an empty garage and her wild imagination. And then came another fabricated story. She even swore we bought a house in Europe, a villa by the sea. But when I asked for details, she couldn't provide any because it never existed outside her dreams. His voice carried a tone of pity, but his eyes gleamed with malice. Each lie rolled off his tongue effortlessly, like poison seeping into the minds of everyone around us. To bolster his claims, Josh produced what appeared to be legitimate medical records, fake documents he'd paid someone to forge. The papers detailed years of supposed treatments for hallucinations and paranoia, complete with signatures from fictional doctors. My heart sank as the officers studied them intently, their expressions growing more skeptical of me with every passing second. It's heartbreaking, Josh added, feigning sorrow. I've done everything I can to help her, but she refuses to accept reality. What he didn't realize, or perhaps didn't care about, was the true motive behind this elaborate ruse. It wasn't merely to discredit me or humiliate me further, it was part of a larger scheme. After my parents' recent passing, they left behind a substantial inheritance, including properties and investments worth millions. Josh had been quietly maneuvering to gain control over these assets, using my alleged mental instability as justification. He planned to declare me unfit to manage my own affairs, positioning himself as the rightful guardian of my estate. Every document, every staged instant served one purpose: to strip me of everything I had left. When the officers finally left, Josh turned to me with a smug grin, confident that his plan was foolproof. You see, Daisy, he said softly, almost tenderly, this is why you need me. Without me, you'd be lost. But instead of feeling defeated, something inside me snapped. How dare he exploit my grief over losing my parents? How could he twist my memories of them into tools for his greed? For the first time, I saw him not as the man I married, but as the monster he truly was. Desperation drove me to our neighbor's door later that evening. I begged him to let me see the hallway footage, my voice trembling with urgency. At first, he hesitated, visibly uncomfortable at the thought of getting involved in what he clearly saw as a marital dispute. I don't want any trouble, Daisy, he muttered, avoiding eye contact. But I couldn't back down, not this time. Please, I pleaded, tears welling up in my eyes. This isn't just about a robbery anymore, it's about my life. Reluctantly, he handed over his phone and pressed play. What unfolded on the screen left me breathless and furious. There was Josh, not once but multiple times, bringing strange women into our home while I was away on business trips. The video showed him hosting wild parties in the living room, laughing and drinking like there were no consequences. My carefully arranged belongings, photos, books, even furniture, were scattered across the floor in chaotic disarray. But the most damning moment came when the camera caught Josh slipping something small and shiny into my handbag, my favorite necklace, the one he had accused me of losing. His calculated actions, the smirk on his face as he planted the evidence, confirmed everything I had suspected. He wasn't just gaslighting me, he was actively framing me for crimes I didn't commit. Before I could fully process what I'd seen, Josh burst through the door, his expression shifting from shock to panic the instant he realized what was on the screen. Without warning, he lunged toward me, trying to grab the phone out of my hands. Give it to me, he shouted, his voice raw with desperation. We struggled, both of us shouting accusations, until the neighbor intervened, pulling us apart. Enough, he yelled, his own fear palpable. I'm calling the police. As we waited for them to arrive, Josh paced back and forth, alternately pleading with me and lashing out. You're ruining everything, he spat, his face red with rage. But I barely heard him. All I could think about was how methodically he had dismantled my trust, my dignity, piece by piece. The man I married, the man I thought loved me, was nothing more than a manipulative liar. And now, thanks to the irrefutable proof on that video, I finally had the upper hand. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. Justice might be within reach after all. As the full weight of Josh's betrayal came crashing down on me, I realized that his deceit ran far deeper than infidelity. It wasn't just about the women he brought into our home or the lies he spun to manipulate me. It was about how he systematically dismantled my life brick by brick. Using my money, he had invested in shady schemes and fraudulent projects, gambling away not only my savings, but also the financial security I had worked so hard to build. Each transaction felt like a dagger twisting in my back, as if every dollar stolen was another piece of my identity stripped away. But the worst revelation came when I discovered the documents hidden in his desk drawer, a contract transferring ownership of our house entirely into his name. The same house we had picked out together, decorated with memories of happier times, now legally belongs solely to him. It's just a formality, he had once said casually when I questioned him about paperwork. But it wasn't. It was part of his grand plan to erase me from his life completely. Every signature forged, every clause carefully worded, all designed to leave me with nothing. The final confrontation happened on a cold evening, the air thick with tension. Standing face to face, I confronted him with everything I knew: the parties, the stolen investments, the secret sale of our home. His response was chilling. With an icy smirk, he leaned forward and delivered the cruelest blow of all. "You were never good enough for me, Daisy. All you've ever done is disappoint." Those words hung heavy in the air, each syllable sharp enough to cut through steel. They weren't just cruel, they were calculated, meant to crush whatever shred of self-worth I had left. That moment became the tipping point. For years, I had allowed myself to be diminished, manipulated, and controlled by a man who saw me as nothing more than a means to an end, but no longer. As tears streamed down my face, I vowed silently that I would take back control, not just of my finances, but of my life. Josh might have thought he could break me, didn't they about me, but instead he had ignited a fire within me. A fire fueled by anger, resilience, and the unshakable determination to rebuild what he had tried so desperately to destroy. Armed with irrefutable evidence, I took the first step toward reclaiming my life. The security footage that exposed Josh's betrayal became more than just proof. It was my weapon against years of manipulation and deceit. I hired the best lawyer in the city, someone known for dismantling even the most airtight defenses of men like Josh. With her guidance, I filed for divorce and initiated legal proceedings against him for embezzlement, fraud, and emotional abuse. Every document we submitted painted a damning picture of his greed and cruelty, leaving no room for excuses or denial. But I didn't stop there. Knowing how much his career meant to him, how desperately he clung to the illusion of success, I sent the video footage directly to his company's HR department. Attached was a detailed letter outlining not only his infidelity, but also his unethical financial dealings during work hours. Within days, Josh was summoned to an emergency meeting where he was stripped of his position and escorted out of the building in disgrace. For the first time in years, he had nothing: no money, no job, and certainly no one willing to stand by him. His downfall wasn't enough to satisfy me entirely, though. What truly sealed his fate was the day he showed up at my door begging for forgiveness. His usually confident demeanor was replaced by desperation as he pleaded, "Daisy, please, you're all I have left. Without you, I'm nothing." He reached out to touch my hand, but I stepped back, my gaze unwavering. Looking straight into his eyes, I said calmly, "I once believed love could conquer anything, but now I see it was nothing but a joke to you. From this moment on, I will live for myself." The weight of those words hit him like a freight train. For years, he had treated me as disposable, a pawn in his games of power and control. Now, standing before me, he realized the full extent of what he had lost. Not just a wife, but the wealth and status I had unknowingly provided. As he turned to leave, defeated and broken, I felt a surge of empowerment coursing through me. This chapter of my life was over, and while the scars would take time to heal, I knew I had emerged stronger than ever. In the months that followed, my life transformed in ways I never thought possible. The legal battle was grueling, but with undeniable evidence and a relentless lawyer by my side, I reclaimed every penny Josh had stolen from me. More importantly, I reclaimed my sense of self-worth. Free from the chains of his manipulation, I began to rebuild, not just financially, but emotionally. I opened a small cafe on the corner of a quiet street, a cozy little place where people could gather over coffee and conversation. It became more than just a business, it was my sanctuary, a symbol of my newfound independence. The cafe attracted an eclectic mix of customers: artists sketching at tables, students buried in books, and strangers sharing stories over steaming cups of espresso. Slowly but surely, these interactions helped mend the cracks in my heart. I formed friendships with people who valued honesty and kindness, qualities Josh had so blatantly lacked. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, unburdened by the weight of lies and betrayal. Every sunrise brought a renewed sense of purpose, and every evening closed with gratitude for how far I'd come. Meanwhile, Josh's world crumbled into irreparable ruin. Stripped of everything, his job, his wealth, and his reputation, he found himself utterly alone. Friends he once flaunted turned their backs on him, unwilling to associate with someone so morally bankrupt. Rumors of his deceit spread like wildfire, leaving him ostracized from the circles he once dominated. He moved into a dingy apartment on the outskirts of town, surviving on scraps and regret. The man who once prided himself on charm and control now wandered aimlessly through life, haunted by the consequences of his actions. Looking back, I realized this journey wasn't just about vengeance, it was about liberation. Josh's betrayal taught me that trust and honesty are the bedrock of any meaningful relationship. Without them, love becomes nothing more than a facade, a hollow imitation of what it should be. But perhaps the most profound lesson was one of resilience. As women, we often hesitate to leave toxic relationships, fearing judgment or loneliness. Yet stepping away from Josh gave me the courage to embrace a brighter future, a future filled with joy, fulfillment, and authenticity. Today, as I sip my morning coffee behind the counter of my cafe, I smile knowing I've emerged stronger than ever. Josh may have tried to destroy me, but instead, he unknowingly set me free. And in doing so, he proved that sometimes endings are not tragedies, they are beginnings waiting to unfold. And just like that, everything changed, but the pain, it still lingers. If this story touched something deep inside you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more truths that hit close to home. This is Love and Betrayal, where every heartbreak has a voice. And every silence hides a secret.